This video is going to show how to use the Shadow of War mesh to object converter, and yeah, I will try to show as good as possible how to edit meshes in Blender and repack them. I don't know if I will do everything in one video, since it's a bit more complicated process, and if I explain everything in detail it would take its time, but I will just start and then take a look what the time says. So to start off, you need SOMO. It stands for Shadow of War Mesh Object. So mesh are the 3D object files the game uses, and O stands for OBJ files. They are pretty much the most basic 3D objects used in computer graphics. And what you need is, again, this executable. You can get it from the Discord, and yeah, that's pretty much it. And you need the unpacked files again, or the mesh dump for this one. I will use my unpacked game since it's unpacked already. So for me personally, picked the barrel just for showcases. Those explosive barrels. And yes, let me show you how to do it. So what you do basically is you drag in a mesh file, then you right click, or you have to navigate with your CMD into this folder. I got an extension that just lets me open my CMD here, so that's basically it. And what you do is you write SOMO, just use tab and it will auto-complete it. Then the name of the mesh file, barrel, and then this. And the M means mesh, so that means SOMO knows that you want to convert a mesh file to an OBJ file. It's just for the inner workings. So just write this at the end so it knows, okay, it's a mesh file. Hit enter and you will see yeah, that it converted, that there are two mesh files, or yeah, not two mesh files, but there are two files in the mesh file. So a mesh file is basically a container of OBJ files, and there are two OBJ files inside, and yeah, here are some datas. And I still wanna point that out, I wrote that already in here, that I wrote the tool and I converted it to C++ and so on, and I did the repacking logic and all that stuff. That was done by me, but the real file analysis was done by Saramot. I don't know if the name is correctly spelled. He did the research and posted it on Zentex and wrote a 3ds Max script for it. So yeah, pretty much without his research all this wouldn't be possible. And yeah, Christian Rao also wrote a nice float 16 library, which is not natively supported by C++, so without him it wouldn't be possible as well. Just a quick side note. Okay, can close this window now, and you can see an output folder with the folder again of the name, which has the same name as the mesh file, and a text file. So the text file basically contains, I originally created this text file, so you can briefly take a look at it and see, okay, those are the face count and the vertices. Faces are basically, yeah, vertices, I think everyone knows what vertices are, and faces are, yeah, the triangles. The game only uses triangulated objects. Some, in very rare cases, games can use not triangles, but I don't know what the name is, polygons with 4 vertices like Blender does, but this is triangulated, so these are triangles. Faces are equal to triangles. Okay, can close this, and yeah, just preview this. You will recognize the object. This is, yeah, and this one. Alright, so this is pretty much it. For unpacking, it's very simple, as you can see. Let's load this into Blender. Just start Blender. Normally, I don't actually know which version I'm using. I'm using one with the new UI 3.0.1, as you can see. What you do is you delete all this, and go to import OBJ file, and in my desktop, example output barrel, import the first one, and you make sure that you keep the word order. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Import the OBJ file, and you can see it here. Do this for the other one too. And there you have the barrel. Okay. What you want to do is, that's very important, since you can now edit. I mean, if you just want to unpack some 3D objects to maybe, I don't know, analyze them, use them anywhere else, you can just stop here. It's the way to go. But if you want to later repack them in a mesh file and then replace them in a packet, you have to keep some things in mind. And for that, the first thing you should do is go to Preferences, Interface, and then Status Bar, and then Show Scene Statistics. That's important to check this. Okay. So I will try to explain it as good as possible. So the game uses so-called skeleton files. Normally for humans, as an example, not skeleton files, but skeletons are used to move certain things. So you have an object like a hand, for example, and you make a skeleton, and the skeleton moves the mesh around to, I don't know, move single fingers of it. Okay, and each vertex in a 3D object has its own weight, which means how much it's affected by a bone. So, and the bone is part of a skeleton. So what that means is that if you, for example, want to replace something on a character which has obviously a skeleton that continuously moves, since it has an idle animation like taking a breath and whatsoever, so your character always moves, so there are always affected bones. So for characters, and I think really only characters, so if you take a look at characters and then model characters, so for example for Sauron, or I don't know, for any character that continuously moves, you have a lot more boundaries, since you need to keep the exact vertex order, so the bone weights won't get screwed up, so that the animations still work. For stiff objects like this one or anything else that's not a character, like swords and I don't know what, you can completely replace them. You can completely replace everything here. In the end, all you need to make sure is that if you had, in this case here, we have two objects. They are numerated with 0, 1, and they count up to the number in this mesh file. There are only those two. All you need to make sure is that each object file in the end has exactly the same vertex count and the exact same face count, and that's everything you need to keep in mind. So what you want to do is, for example, is, let's say I want to replace those barrels with a completely different object. I can, I don't know if I got an object right now to replace it with. Let me take a look if I find one. Yeah, I just decided to use the monkey. I searched a bit, but I wasn't able to find something good. It's just for example purposes, so I will just use the Blender default monkey here, nothing too spectacular. So what you do is you can delete this one now. You can just delete those two, or better said not, you don't need to directly delete them. But what you can do is, if you want to say, okay, so this one here is obviously very low poly, and this has not enough faces that it can collect. So this monkey here has a lot more faces than this object file here, obviously. So this can later not contain this monkey. But this one here, if you take a look into edit mode by pressing tab, has pretty, I would guess, if you take a look at the right bottom here, if you select all, you can see that we have 1402 vertices. You can also see this in a text file right here. So let's just open that up, and let's see if the monkey has approximately, it has to have the same, exactly the same or less. So what you're gonna take a look at, 1402. 1402. I already 1 minute ago I deleted one of the files. That's not what you want to do. I made a little mistake there. Don't delete files. Always keep them in here. That's important. Okay. So what you have here is this one has a lot more vertices. So I have to I don't know how to do that. I think it's limited to solve. I think that's what I want to do. It's just for showcase purposes, so let's just make it very soft. Can look shitty, I don't care. Okay. So now the problem is Blender uses let that go away. Blender uses so now we got less vertices and less faces. That's good. You wouldn't have to, it's way less, but yeah, I don't care right now. So the thing is, as you can see, Blender does not use triangles. It uses pretty much everything except for triangles. So what you gotta do is you have to mark everything, and then I think Control T, Control and then press T to triangulate the faces, and you can see you only have triangles left. And if you take a look at this, it has 546 faces, and now so you can take a look at this. It has 546 faces. So now you can see it has exactly the same count of faces as triangles, and that's what you have to have. If you have more faces than triangles, it's obviously not triangulated because there something hides there. That's not a triangle. So here you can see we have less faces and a lot less vertices. That's good. You could have more. You can have up to those numbers. So what you do is you keep this open because we are not completely finished now. What you do is you cannot delete stuff, but what I found out works very, very well is you can delete this one now, the one you want to replace. We don't want to replace this since this has not enough. If you take a look at this, it has not enough triangles and vertices to contain this monkey head. So what we have to do is we won't replace this, but we will replace this one. What we do now is we delete this and rename this here to be the name of the old one. Where can I rename this? Yeah, F2 did the job. Barrel 1. Now this is our barrel 1 officially. And what you have to do is now, since this one is still unchanged, but you cannot delete it. What you can do, you can imitate the effect of deleting stuff by just downscaling them so much that it's so tiny that the game simply just won't render it anymore. Just move it inside the object and decrease the size by, you can see it's literally gone. It's still there. It has still the same vertex count, but it's not visible anymore, so it doesn't interest. There's no interest more. So now the important stuff, and that's a little bit more complicated. So basically what the repacking does is it overrides the vertices, the position vertices. But this monkey head has less vertices now than the file we are replacing. Ignore this one. You know, this is the one we downscaled now. It's inside. We don't care about this anymore. So what we do is we take a look at this, and the monkey head has, go into edit mode, select all, has only 292 vertices and 546 triangles. Well, this has or faces, you can't call it both. So what you have to do now is, I will post the script on the Discord soon. I wrote a quick Blender script which generates an object. Go to scripting and open, and I have my script here, random mesh. This is a very simple script. You don't have to understand anything at all. What it basically does is it creates a random mesh with a specific number of vertices and faces. So what you do now is you just fill your object with the leftover vertices it doesn't have. So what you can do now is you go into layout again, take a look. How many vertices does this object have? 292. You open up the calculator. Decimal of course. And what you do is you count, subtract 656 subtracted with 292, and that's the vertices you need to generate in order to make the mesh the original size. I hope you get my point, but that's what you need to do in order to keep the original size of the bash file. So what you do is copy this, go into scripting, and num vertices is this. Now go into in here again, and you take a look at the faces of this file. It has I did a mistake, sorry, it's wrong, I miscalculated. I need to obviously use the vertices, sorry. 1402 subtracted with 292, sorry. This is the one I want to use. Like this. And now what you do is you take the faces. We have 600 faces subtracted with the count of faces we have here, 546. Hope I didn't do any mistake. And we have exactly the same triangle count, so that means that we triangulated the object correctly. 110. Alright, makes sense. Okay. Now I can close this and I put this in here. I hope I didn't do any mistake. Yes, let me quickly control it one more time, one more look at it. 292, and well, yeah, makes sense. Okay, so what you do is now just run the script, and what it will do is it created a new object called dummy, and you can see it looks again very shitty, but yeah, I will upscale it once so you can see it. It's a complete mess, and that's what you want to have. So this is now makes the object. Those are the faces and vertices you needed to have left. So this object here, combined with the monkey head, those two together now have, if you select this too, yeah, I don't know how to do this. Wait, let me enter the edit mode. Yeah, so yeah, it's ugly, I know, but as you can see, I selected the one I generated and the barrel, and if you take a look at the bottom, you have exactly the same count of vertices now and faces, and that's what you need. So it means that it worked. Yeah, so leave the edit mode, and you can just again do the same as we did for barrel 0, just decrease the size by a lot, and yeah, make sure you move it inside the object. I mean, you cannot, nobody looks inside the object, so yeah. Let me increase the size of this head a bit, and that's good. So now what you do is you combine them. I think it's Control J. Yes, Control J, and oh, it's called dummy, so you gotta rename it again, barrel 1. Okay, and this is basically it, to replace a file that is not a character but anything else. And as you can see, you have literally infinite freedom, except that you just have a vertices and faces limit. So what you do now is you select each of the objects separately, export OBJ, you go onto the where you got them from, output barrel, press this, and now it's very important, limit to, you uncheck this, press selection only, geometry, and what you do is you don't write this, don't write this, don't write this, don't write this, and keep vertex order, and that's all you gotta do. And now you can just export it, barrel 0, only select it, and click on barrel 0, export, and do the same for barrel 1. Check again if everything's correct. Looks good. Okay. If the file size now changes a bit, that's okay. So take a look at this, looks good. And if you take a look now at barrel 0, it's, yeah, you can see it in here, but it's incredibly small. Okay, if the kilobytes change in here, it's because often I think Blender's files are often a little bit smaller than the files created by Somo. That's because I used more floating point precision than Blender. I think Blender, if you take a look at it, Blender uses, oh no, Blender is also pretty precise. Okay, yeah, okay, never mind. But I already, so yeah, but still don't look at the kilobytes of the OBJ files, because they can differ depending on what metadata or whatever Blender writes into those OBJ files. Okay, so now we have the barrel mesh. What you do is now you make a duplicate of it and call it barrel backup mesh. And what you do is you open Somo again. Now what you do is you write in dot double backslash, that means current directory. You locate into output, again double backslash, and then you pick the folder in which the OBJ files are in. So it knows, okay, those OBJ files should be picked and overwritten in. So you now have, so it uses those OBJ files of the output folder you just modified. So now you write O, so it knows, okay, it's an OBJ file I'm passing in and not a mesh file. And what your last argument is barrel.mesh. So that means that we wanna write the data, we now repack the data we just modified into this mesh file. Hit enter, and looks good. File creation completed. And you can see here, used folder to convert OBJ files to a mesh are those, and then used file to receive the OBJ files is the barrel mesh. And what you now do is you have to check if those two files are exactly the same size. They have to be exactly the same size, and they are. So here you can see, and here exactly the same size. If they are not exactly the same size, you definitely screwed something up with keeping the exact vertex size, vertex face count, and so on. So then you probably made a mistake, while that you probably have not enough vertices, or too much vertices, or not enough faces, or I don't know what. So that's your last check, and if that's the same after the repack, you can safely say that worked. One little checkup you could do is, if you're interested, is you can just unpack this one again. I can delete the output folder now. So since the barrel, this is basically not the barrel anymore, this is the monkey, you can now unpack this one again to see if it worked. So now this is the barrel one we modified, and it's obviously the monkey head. And as you can see, it's unpacked perfectly, so it's definitely worked. Okay, so this is basically the repacking process. I don't know if it makes sense to write a packet since the video is very long. So I will probably not do that, since I already made a video about that.